I had been driving all night, pushing through the empty highways with nothing but static-filled radio stations and the low hum of the engine for company. It was close to 3 a.m. when I finally gave in to exhaustion and pulled into the first roadside motel I could find. The neon sign buzzed faintly, half the letters burnt out, leaving only "Motel" glowing against the black sky. The parking lot was almost empty, just a few cars parked at odd angles, their windshields fogged over from the night air. Inside, the clerk barely looked up from the small TV on the counter when I checked in. He slid me the key to room 6 with the kind of disinterest that told me I wasn't the first desperate traveler he'd seen that night. The room smelled faintly of mildew, the wallpaper peeling in long strips near the ceiling. The carpet was threadbare, stained in places I didn't want to think about. I told myself it didn't matter. All I needed was a bed and a few hours of sleep before I got back on the road. But lying there in the dark, I realized the walls were thinner than I thought. From the next room, I heard the faint sound of movement, a drawer opening, something heavy dragging across the floor. I checked the parking lot through the blinds. There hadn't been another car when I pulled in. The sound came again, clearer this time. A low scraping, like furniture being shifted just a few feet at a time. Then silence. I tried to shake it off. Old motels had noises, pipes expanding, walls settling. I rolled onto my side, pulling the covers tight, convincing myself it was nothing. But a few minutes later, I heard it again, this time from inside my own room. The wooden chair by the desk had moved. When I sat up, it wasn't against the wall anymore. It was angled slightly toward the bed. At first, I thought I had imagined it. Travel fatigue, lack of sleep, my eyes playing tricks in the dim glow of the parking lot light that bled faintly through the blinds. I rubbed my face, blinked hard, and looked again. But the chair was definitely not where it had been when I entered. It was turned just enough that its wooden back no longer faced the desk but angled toward the bed, toward me. The sort of subtle shift someone might make if they wanted a better view. The air felt thicker then, heavy with a damp smell of old carpet and something sharper, metallic almost, that hadn't been there before. I listened hard, straining past the muffled buzz of the neon outside, but the silence pressed in too perfectly. The silence was the problem, it was the silence of someone holding their breath. I told myself to get up and push the chair back against the wall, to laugh it off. But my body resisted, locked in a quiet panic. I reached instead for my phone on the nightstand, its faint glow spreading across my trembling hands. No signal. Just one bar flickering, then gone. I lay back, heart hammering against my ribs, telling myself again and again, it's nothing, just a creak of the floor, just shadows playing tricks. But then came the sound. It wasn't loud, but it was deliberate. A slow drag of wood over carpet, just inches, almost teasing. The chair had shifted again, closer to the bed this time. I sat upright so fast that the springs in the mattress groaned beneath me. My breathing filled the room in short bursts, and I realized how quiet everything else was. No television leaking through the walls, no highway hum outside, not even the rain that had been falling earlier. Just the sharp tick of the bedside clock. And then, faintly, another sound, softer but unmistakable, the whisper of fabric. Like someone adjusting in their seat. I focused my eyes hard on the outline of the chair. It sat there, dimly lit by the slit of neon bleeding through the blinds. Empty. Always empty. But the longer I stared, the more my mind insisted there was something, just a suggestion of shape that shouldn't be there. A dip in the shadow, the faint curve of a shoulder that wasn't part of the wood. I pulled the blanket tighter around me, gripping it so hard that my knuckles whitened. Every instinct screamed to get out, to leave the key on the counter and drive into the night, no matter how tired I was. But the door was 3 steps past that chair, and right then those 3 steps felt impossible. So I stayed where I was, frozen, listening, watching. The longer I waited, the more certain I became that I wasn't alone in that room. The chair never moved quickly. That was the worst part. It didn't jump or lurch across the floor, it shifted in tiny increments, so small I might have doubted my own eyes if not for the sound. That slow drag of wood fibers over carpet, almost like someone was savoring the fact that I could hear it. When I finally worked up the nerve to throw the blanket aside and reach for the lamp, the bulb buzzed and flickered once before filling the room with a sickly yellow glow. My relief was immediate, and shallow light always made me feel safer. But what the light revealed only hollowed that safety out. The chair was closer than ever. It now sat at an angle just a few feet from the foot of the bed, facing me completely. Its shadow spilled long across the carpet, stretched and distorted by the lamp, and for a second I thought the shadow looked wrong. Too thick, too human. Like there was more to it than wood and angles. I couldn't take my eyes off it. My breathing grew uneven, shallow gulps of air that scraped my throat. I considered calling the front desk, but my phone was still useless, and the thought of turning my back to dial on the room's sticky landline was unbearable. Then came the noise from the bathroom. It was soft at first, a faint creak like tiles shifting under weight. Then the unmistakable squeal of the shower curtain rings dragging along the rod. The curtain had moved. My pulse thundered in my ears as I turned my head slowly toward the bathroom door. It was cracked open just enough for the dark inside to seem endless, like it could swallow me if I stared too long. I couldn't sit there anymore. The thought of waiting for something to step out of that darkness was worse than anything that might happen if I moved. I grabbed my bag from the floor, nearly tripping over myself as I shoved my arms into my jacket. My keys jingled in my pocket, louder than they should have been, like the room was amplifying every sound I made. The chair loomed between me and the door and I had to pass it. Each step felt like walking into a trap. I kept my eyes locked on it, daring it to move, daring the shadow to shift in some undeniable way. But it didn't. It sat perfectly still, its wooden legs rooted to the stained carpet, though I could swear I felt heat radiating from it, like the presence of someone who had been sitting there just seconds earlier. When I reached the door, my hands fumbled on the lock, slick with sweat. Behind me, the floor creaked. I didn't turn around. I yanked the door open, the hinges groaning, and burst into the damp night air. The neon sign buzzed above, casting the parking lot in a weak pink glow. The clerk was still at the counter, watching his small TV as if nothing in the world could possibly be wrong. I didn't stop. I drove off into the rain, my headlights cutting through the empty highway, the motel shrinking in my rearview mirror. I didn't check out. I didn't care about the bag of clothes I left behind. 4 days after, I tried to convince myself I had imagined it all just exhaustion, shadows, tricks of the mind. But one thing stayed with me. When I finally opened my wallet the next morning, tucked behind the folded bills was the motel's room key. The plastic tag still read Room 6. I had left it on the nightstand.